Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Brian. Unfortunately, today's video was blocked mostly everywhere. YouTube says it's a partial block, but it was a pretty lengthy list. So, as I usually do, I'm going to splice in the analysis portion after this. And if you have any comments and all that, they can go in this video space. If you want to see the full reaction plus analysis, there is a link in the description to check it out on the Google Drive. All right, thanks for being patient with me with these blocked videos. YouTube is not the greatest source for this stuff, but we make do. We get through it. All right, so without further ado, here's the analysis section. All right, so this is metalcore though. I don't I almost want to say that some of the rhythmic elements are too technical for it to fit into what I thought metalcore was. To me, this is more of whatever Meshuggah is. I've brought them up so many times, I don't know what genre they are. Um, but yeah, that heavily rhythmic take with low, harsh growls and kind of merging them together. And this kind of takes that concept and applies a little, just the tiniest bit of melody on top of it. This is not what I thought metalcore was by a long shot. Um, so I I can appreciate what's going on here. This is not my cup of tea, as I'm sure longtime viewers kind of already figured that one out. I appreciate what's going on though. There's a lot of precision in the musicianship, not just for a single player, but for pretty much everybody playing except the keyboardist and the vocalist. Not to say that they don't have tough parts to play, but the rhythmic element that is going into the drumming and the guitars, including the bass, I believe, I didn't really hear a bass, but I'm pretty sure I saw a bass, which is just, I don't know if it's because the guitars and bass drum covered it up just because they were playing so many similar rhythmic ideas. Um, I mean, that definitely could have been what happened, but just the precision and speed and syncopation that needs to go in synergizing the entire band. You don't just have one person laying down these ridiculously fast, tremolo picked sections or the double bass kicks. You are lining up your attacks with two or three other bandmates, and you all have to have the exact same attack, the exact same release. Um, or I guess maybe the next attack, being that the notes are so short, the next attack, the subsequent attack, would kind of be the release just because there's not enough space to actually, mute any of the sounds. So all your attacks have to be completely precise with a couple other people, and that is just the rhythmic element, the internal metronome that these guys have is so in sync, probably just from playing together for so long. Born of Osiris is not a small band. I know they have a handful of albums out, not sure how many, but they're extremely popular in the requests at least. So I'm not sure how long this group has had to work with each other, to play with each other at the point of this song coming out, but I'm sure that there's some chemistry and synergy going on there just from having played together for some period of time at least. But also, like I said, just their internal metronomes, the way that they feel time and transfer that into their limbs to play music with this level of precision is just it's just wild. There's definitely an art to that. There's a lot to appreciate in this craft, even if you don't necessarily enjoy listening to what's produced from it. Um, but Like I said, it's not really my cup of tea. And the thing is, the part that really kills me is there's just no melody here. And we've actually gotten into conversations in the comment section about this before regarding metal and melody. And that's not to say that metal doesn't have melody, but there's definitely two sort of ideologies to metal writing, I should say. And like I said, we've had this conversation before. I don't remember what band it was where it was brought up, but there's definitely metal music that thrives on more of a textural and rhythmic element. It's not so much about writing good music so much as writing music that sounds cool. And if that means that what you write is entirely rhythmic, so be it. We see stuff like here where we write a pedal note for 30 or 60 bars. I mean, it felt like we were doing that pedal note forever, but it does sound cool. There is something metal about those really quick changing 30-second note patterns that they were employing during the verse. There is something very aggressive and metal about that, even though it's not a really strong musical idea in the sense of melodic aspects, melody and chord composition and chord theory and stuff like that. It's not really comparable there. This is more akin to something you might find in drumline, where it's more about the rhythmic finesse rather than melodic composition. And then you have the other side of music of metal that really looks at melodic aspects, and we can kind of see that in symphonic metal. Bands like Dream Theater and Nightwish, bands that really push the melodic aspects. And then of course there's lots of stuff in between, and there's really few bands that really emphasize just a single of those elements, but I found that there's actually quite a few people who tend to not necessarily enjoy one to the exclusion of another, but favor one element over another. And I definitely lie in the more melodic camp. I can appreciate some of the more rhythmic elements to metal. But when we start approaching this, where it's more of like an 80-20 mix with a favorability to rhythmic aspects, it falls a bit short for me. It bounces off of me a bit hard, and that's just my personal opinion. That has nothing to do about the song. I'm not saying that the song's bad or that the band's bad. Just saying that I personally don't enjoy it as a casual listener. However, since we've had that conversation, I've always kind of kept it at the back of my mind. It's something interesting. It's not exclusive to metal, but I seem to find that metal has more of a strong divide because both sides have strong mainstream presentations about it. Whereas if you look for classical and you're going to look for more rhythmic oriented music, you're going to actually tend to fall more into sort of the avant-garde area of classical music, some of the more experimental stuff that kind of eschews the melodic aspect for more textural ideas. And that's where you get stuff like Eric Whitacre's Ghost Train, which the music doesn't really care so much about sounding like good music. Well, at least the first movement doesn't sound so much about sounding like good music. It wants to sound like a train pulling into a station, and you're going to deal with a lot of rhythmic and textural elements there. So, like I said, that's kind of more on the fringe side. You enter more of an avant-garde experimental idea of classical, whereas with metal, they're both front and center. We have very popular, more rhythmic-oriented stuff. We have very popular melodic-oriented music, and it's just a very interesting phenomenon. I've kind of gone on a bit of a tangent here. I haven't really talked about Born of Osiris for a few minutes, but I really wanted to bring that up. It's fascinating to me how both of these sides of metal are, greatly appreciated in the communities, and they both, like I said, have very strong present bands who sort of embody these different ideas, and neither one of them's really pushed to the fringe. It's very cool. Back to Born of Osiris, though. Um, so yeah, like I said, the more rhythmic element I appreciate, but it bounces off of me a little bit just because I'm not used to it. It's not. I really look for melody, and I thought it was really cool that they had the keyboardist, but I found at least in this track the keyboard to be a little underutilized. The opening was gorgeous. They can write really beautiful melodic work. Not to mention we had the end solo, which was, aside from being completely shred, I would have liked a little bit of some variation in there as far as note length, maybe working with space, which is something they do throughout the rest of the song. They just didn't put any space in there. It's pretty much all shred all the time. Um, it did have some really interesting melodic lines. So it's obviously not a shortcoming of the band. They can write melodic music. They just, they choose not to, which is fine. Being multi-talented doesn't mean you need to employ all your talents all the time. So I do appreciate that they can go the other route. And if you are a Born of Osiris fan, maybe you know of a song that is a little bit more melodic in nature, go ahead and hit me up with that. I would not mind checking out more of them. Um, so they do have this more melodic side, and like I mentioned in the middle, I do wish we could have seen a little bit more of that. But I think for fans of the song, fans of the genre, I don't know that you're going to be able to get anything else, anything better than this. They kind of go all in on that rhythmic element, all in on the harshness, the aggressiveness. They don't back off. There's very few moments of relax or relief from it. It is just going 110% the entire song. Chorus, verse, it really doesn't matter. You got those really fast rhythmic tremolo picking and double bass kicks, um, with the growls just kind of going all the time. What did I point out? Oh, space. Yeah, so when you look at their writing, it is not constant 30-second notes. There's rests between these gaps, and the gaps are sort of, they're not random, but they're very different. We'll have like 3 notes in a row and then a rest, and then like 6 notes in a row, then a rest, and like 5 notes in a row. And it gives it this sort of disjointed chugging. But when you view it as a whole for the entire 4 or 8 bar phrasing, however they go about with writing this, you'll hear that there's actually a really nice flow and rhythm to it, and you can actually really easily get into the groove. And I'm going to attribute a lot of that to the drumming. While he does put a lot of the more obtuse, quicker rhythmic elements in the feet, his handwork, his arm work, is doing a really good job of keeping hold of the tempo and giving the listener something to jam to. So I appreciate that it didn't go all in on that wild tempo feel, or sorry, the wild time feel, and kind of be a little bit less accessible by doing some crazy stuff up in the arms too. But they do a little bit of immature there. They do incorporate a lot of ideas of space. It's those rests between notes, and like I said, we have these gaps of notes, and then some rests, and some other gaps and rests. And it's interesting when you look at the drum and the guitar patterns where those rests lie, and then when they incorporate the vocals, listen to where the vocals sit. A lot of the vocal accents where the vocalist is maybe hitting a different note. Maybe he's like really jamming right here in the middle, sort of rap style, taking that one note and really changing up some of the rhythmic aspects to make it interesting. But he had like 2 or 3 different fry vocals, and they, even though they have, their undertones and undertones, and there's no real note, there's a perceived, at least what I heard, a middle note, a higher fry, and a lower growl. And listen to when he changes those and really draws attention to the vocals as an instrument. And you'll notice that it ends up being pocketed between these 30-second note rhythms. And it actually fills in the space that the guitarist and drummer were leaving empty. And it's a really smart way to write rhythmically complex music when you don't have melodic aspects to sort of you know change the spotlight, I guess is a way to word that. If we're listening to some counterpoint or heavily layered melodic and chord based writing, the spotlight changes around based on mix and based on which instrument is typically playing a faster line. It's more interesting. That's the one our ear's going to go to. And you don't really have that too much when everybody's playing at 100% like this. So the way to do it is to find the spaces where instruments are cutting out and to put the new instrument in there. And as long as that instrument doesn't end their line, the ear will typically stick with them. So then when the vocalist pauses and maybe the guitars and drums are still playing, then you'll tune back into them. And it's this really cool back and forth, at least as far as I was concerned, the way I listened to the music, where they were using spaces in the rhythmic writing to have the spotlight changing between instruments. So yeah, very cool. Um, I guess the last thing I really want to talk about is that guitar solo. I mentioned that it's very technical, of course. It's just all shred. Some really nice quick picking, precise uh, uh, fingering up on the neck. There's a really nice sweep picking section that was very clean. I'm trying to think back to 2012. I remember sweep picking was coming in like 2005, 2006. It was getting kind of popular in some of the fringer technical metal stuff, from what I remember. But there was still a lot of muddiness to it. So this, I guess, was maybe about half a year later. So it kind of makes sense that it was very clean. But I also wonder if they were maybe one of the earlier bands to really have some clean sweeps in their playing. Um, But yeah, that stuck out to me a little bit on this listen, was just how clean that sweep was between the shredding. There wasn't really a lot of time to really uh, settle the fingers in and prepare for it. He went from one shred, from one quick riff into another quick riff, and there wasn't really a lot of time to prepare for it. So the fact that it comes out as clean as it did is pretty cool. I suppose it also could be some recording trickery. They're technically, they could have been three different takes. I wonder if it's that clean live. But I mean, when we talk about guitarists and drummers and these people in these bands that are just, so far up there on the chain of mastering their instruments, there's not even any point in doubting that these people can do this stuff live. So even if it was done with three distinct takes to get the perfect take in the studio, I don't doubt that they can just pull this off live and it's just beautiful. So, but I do wish, again, that some of that work, first of all, could have been slowed down a little bit. I understand the track was kind of all about running at 110%, just constantly booking it. And I don't know how well a more legato approach into some of those lines would have worked. Maybe it would have cleaned up some of the parts in the solo that felt a bit, it's not that they felt jittery, but it definitely felt like a few 8-bar phrases mashed together. And I wonder if maybe a legato note held between some of those bars, some of those phrases would have helped clean that up just a little bit. But I mean, the solo still sounded killer, and like I said, it's technically impressive. I would have just liked a little bit more legato work to it. For, like I said, the spacing. There's so much spacing work in the rest of the song, it's weird for it not to be present here. But also, I would have loved to hear some of that guitar playing over some of the more rhythmic aspects. They teased it a little bit with the keyboard work, but it just, the melodies were not as strong. There was that one keyboard line that was eighth notes, and it was, I don't know, a 2-bar pattern maybe. And I really wish that had been developed into a full melodic idea to play against the rhythmic quality in the guitars and sort of the melody stand in the vocals. It just would have sounded so great. But at the same time, I understand it would have been a huge departure from their sound. So I appreciate that they probably It's not that they couldn't do it, but that they wouldn't. Because, you know, everybody has a brand, they have a sound. Very few bands really take wide sweeping changes to what they sound like, because I mean, we've seen it too many times in the past. Bands change and then their fans turn on them. It's ridiculous. But I don't know. Those are my thoughts on Born of Osiris's Follow the Sign. Just where you guys come in, though, drop me some comments if you enjoyed this or not. If you thought I was spot on, maybe I'm missing something, you can fill me in with some details. I don't know. Above that's the description box with some links for stuff adjacent to the channel, such as the Patreon, the Discord, Twitter, all sorts of stuff. If you're interested in any of that, go ahead and click those links. Below that is a like, subscribe, and a bell to ring. All three of those things help out the channel immensely. 20K is incoming. We just passed 16, and so 20 is the next goal. Let's bring it. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, with another metalcore reaction. Until next time, though, remember to be critical, never cynical about the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.